All right, let's get into this. We're talking about a secret court, a really powerful law, and this fundamental battle over who really gets the final say in a democracy. So we're going to explore this one central question, a question that was at the heart of a huge UK Supreme Court case. Can a government actually create a court whose decisions can never be challenged? I mean, think about that. It really gets to the core of how we balance power and justice.
So to really get a grip on this whole thing, we've got to meet the main player, right? This very unusual court that's right at the center of the storm.
This is the Investigatory Powers Tribunal, or the IPT for short. And you've got to understand, this is the only court in the entire UK that keeps an eye on the nation's secret surveillance agencies. You know, MI5, MI6, all of them. If you think you've been unlawfully spied on, these are the guys you go to.
Now, because it's dealing with such sensitive stuff, the IPT was built with this really unusual, really powerful feature written right into its founding law. Basically, a feature designed to completely shield it from the rest of the legal system.
And this feature, well, it was essentially a legal wall. A wall built by Parliament with one goal in mind, to make the IPT's decisions absolutely untouchable.
Okay, look at the actual words here. This little bit of text is what lawyers call an ouster clause, and those words shall not be questioned in any court. I mean, you can't get much clearer or more absolute than that, right?
Yeah, the whole point was to make the IPT the first and final word on anything to do with surveillance, to stop any other court, even the Supreme Court, from ever second-guessing what it decided.
So the way it was supposed to work was super simple. Think of it like a referee at a football match. The ref makes a call, and that's it. His decision can't be questioned by anyone ever, even if it looks like he totally misunderstood the rules of the game. The call on the field stands, period.
But that leads us to the million-dollar question, doesn't it? What happens if this untouchable referee isn't just making a tough call, but is fundamentally getting the rulebook wrong? And that question set the stage for a massive constitutional showdown.
What we're looking at here is a real clash of the titans. This whole thing pits two of the most fundamental principles in all of UK law directly against each other.
Okay, so in one corner, you've got parliamentary sovereignty. This is the bedrock idea that Parliament is the supreme legal power in the country. When it passes a law, that's the law. Full stop. Nobody can overturn it. So that ouster clause, that was Parliament's will, written down in black and white.
So the government's argument was, pretty straightforward. They said, look, Parliament wrote a law telling the courts to stay out of the IPT's business. The job of the courts is to follow the law, not to pick and choose which parts they like. End of story, right?
But in the other corner, you've got this equally powerful, equally important idea, the rule of law. And this is the core principle that everyone, from you and me all the way up to the government itself, is subject to the law. No one gets a free pass. No one is above it.
And this is where Privacy International came in. They argued that for a country to actually be governed by law, there has to be a way for higher courts to check in and make sure bodies like the IPT are playing by the rules, acting within their legal boundaries. Without that oversight, a tribunal could basically just make up its own law as it goes along.
So this epic clash of ideas, these two core constitutional principles, went all the way to the UK's highest court. They needed a final, decisive answer.
And wow, the decision was incredibly close. The 7 judges were split right down the middle. It came down to a nail-biting 4-3 vote, and that really shows you just how deep and difficult this question was.
But by the absolute narrowest of margins, they sided with Privacy International. They decided that the IPT was not, in fact, untouchable. That legal wall that Parliament tried to build, turns out it wasn't as solid as everyone thought.
And here's the key bit, the heart of their reasoning. The court basically said, look, our fundamental job is to interpret the law. And they said that completely taking that power away would actually break the rule of law itself. They argued that Parliament couldn't have possibly intended to create a legal black hole where the law doesn't apply.
So what they did was some really clever legal footwork. Think of it like this. The ouster clause stops you from arguing with the ref's call about whether a player was offside. That's a judgment call on the facts of the play. But, and this is the big but, it doesn't stop you from arguing that the ref is using the offside rule from a completely different sport. They drew a new line. They said the IPT's decisions on the facts might be final, but their understanding of the law itself can never be in some law-free zone that the courts can't reach.
Okay, so after all that complex legal back and forth, what's the big takeaway? Why does any of this matter to us, outside of a courtroom? Well, this decision is a massive defense of something called judicial review, which is just the essential process where courts check to see if the government is acting legally. It powerfully reaffirms that no matter how secret or sensitive a part of the government is, it can never be placed completely above the law.
Really, at its heart, this whole ruling ensures that even a super-secret court dealing with the deepest state secrets still has to answer to the fundamental rules of the legal system. It's a huge statement that accountability isn't optional.
So, remember that question we started with? Can a government create a court whose decisions can never be challenged? Well, after this epic legal showdown, the UK Supreme Court's answer was a clear, decisive no. This case really secured the court's vital role in holding power to account. But it does leave us with one last, kind of provocative thought to chew on. As technology and state power keep growing, where is the next great battle for the rule of law going to be fought?